Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Warcraft news. Okay, this is a massive episode. We've got a major update to the Hong Kong situation with Blizzard issuing their statement, as well as a lot from patch 8.3 itself. And of course, a massive thanks to our patrons. Their support has been incredible, and they get access to our complete history of World of Warcraft series early, with patch 1.7 and the Blood Plague special being up right now, and they also get physical rewards. And on that, I'm happy to announce that in addition to Priest Month, we're also doing a special, where we're remastering the first piece that we ever did. We also got feedback that the bookmarks were announced too late last month, so we're going to include them in this month's as well. So yes, that's going to be a chunky package, and now that we've covered our chunky package, let's get into the news. Okay, so Blizzard have finally responded to the Hearthstone ban situation. Blitzchung is going to receive his prize money, with him and the casters now only having 6-month suspensions. There is, however, a lot more to get into and quite a lot of logic to pull apart, as Blizzard's statement is shaky at best. Now, it will take a few minutes to get to the most impactful point of this, but trust me, please bear with me, it really is worth getting to that point, because it really does fall to pieces. So in their statement, they say that they want to bring the world together through epic entertainment, and that think globally, lead responsibly, and every voice matters are the company principles that apply to this case, and that their goal is to create a diverse, inclusive global community. Now, I already take issue with part of what they've said here, because sure, Overwatch is diverse and inclusive, but Blizzard did not lead the way there, they just did it whenever it was popular. The goals of the Chinese regime, though, they're anything but diverse and inclusive. Now, of course, I don't question the commitment of Blizzard's employees to those goals, merely the hypocrisy of their corporate decision-making. So, when Blizzard President J. Allen Brack says they're committed to those goals, I think the message does just ring a little bit hollow. Next, though, Jay talks about how Blitzchung did violate the rules that he agreed to, and I think Blitz himself would agree with that, and really, that's part of the point of his protest. He made his protest knowing that there would be a personal cost. With that, Blizz President J. Allen Brack then proceeds to lay the groundwork of what their values mean when applied to the context of a tournament. He says that the winner's interview is there to share the moment of the victory with the viewers, and the Blitz instead use that to comment on the Hong Kong situation, which is a violation of Blizzard's rules that Blitz agreed to. Now, Jay then went on to say that the Every Voice Matters value actually means that they're encouraging everyone in their community to share their viewpoints publicly, but that the official broadcast needs to be about the tournament, and that it needs to be a place where everyone is welcome. Because of that, they want their official channels to be focused on the game. So let's just dive into this statement. It is them firmly saying no politics or similar things in official tournament broadcasts. Now, I think to a degree that's a reasonable enough position. They would not want soapboxing to be the norm there, because I think it likely would lead to maybe a worse viewer experience, but I think really all rules are violated, and each individual needs to make a bit of a determination there themselves. And I think it's interesting because there's a sound position here where you can, I think, agree with the rules as they are, but also agree that sometimes there are circumstances where it makes sense to break a rule. I think that's actually the case for many rules. 95% of the time the rule makes sense, but there might be an edge case where it's worth breaking the rule. Now, of course, it's funny them saying that given the highly rule-oriented, strictly punished society that ruler for life Winnie the Pooh wants to create. I actually think that Taliesin put it quite well at the end of his video regarding how he would blast Blizzard on his own channel, but would treat, say, like a BlizzCon hosting gig in a different way, given the rules that he hypothetically would have agreed to there. I suspect, though, that if Blizzard were to do something extra bad, then maybe Tali would have a personal breaking point where he would break that rule. And I think that's pretty much what Blitz did here, and it's also where I fall on the issue. Of course, not putting any words in his mouth, but I think he was pretty much on the money with that bit at the end. Jay then went on to talk about the role of the shoutcasters, saying that their job is to elevate watchability and to keep the viewing experience being focused on the tournament. Next, Jay got onto the larger question, though, of whether Blizzard's actions were based off the content of Blitz's message. Now, Jay said that part of thinking globally, leading responsibly, and every voice matters is recognizing that they have players and fans in almost every country in the world. He said that their goal is to help players connect in areas of commonality, like their passion for games, and to create a sense of shared community. Now, look, this is a virtuous goal, but it's partially naive because sure, those commonalities do exist, but also incompatibilities do exist, in this case, between much of the Western audience and the position of the Chinese government. And in times like this, well, I mean, personally, I'll always err on the side of freedom. Jay said that the specific views of Blitzchung were, in all caps, not a factor in the decision that they made, saying, "I want to be clear, our relationships in China had no influence on our decision. We have these rules to keep the focus on the game and on the tournament to the benefit of a global audience, and that was the only consideration in the actions we took." Okay, he said that. Do we believe him? Honestly, I find it hard to. So let's say maybe an Eastern European player comes out against the treatment of homosexual people in Russia. Would Blizzard really strip their winnings and ban them, as was their initial response? Or if somebody, say, wore a pride pin? If this policy was to be applied equally, then the punishments would have to be similar. So I'd ask Blizzard this: if a player issued a pro-LGBT statement, a pro-climate change statement, or an anti-gun statement, would you have done the same thing? Especially if it were done in a Western venue. I find it hard to believe that they would, and because of that, I don't think Jay's statement is that realistic. Now, look, based on your personal worldview, you might say to me that some of those things are facts, that they're not political statements. Well, that's where I would say to go back to Jay's prior statement. Part of thinking globally, leading responsibly, and every voice matters is recognizing that we have players and fans in almost every country in the world. Our goal is to help players connect in areas of commonality, like our passion for games, and to create a sense of shared community. And in his statement, Jay also mentioned divisive social and political comments. So, to some of Blizzard's fans, those things would constitute divisive political statements. And that's what's interesting here. When it comes down to things being hard, they will be spineless, even though when things are safe, such as with Overwatch, they will apply a different set of rules to themselves. Would a player expressing a value that is in line with Overwatch receive the same punishment? Based on what Jay said here, they would, but I find it hard to believe they would in reality, and I think that I think that's a lot of Jay's points dismantled. You can't have it both ways, profiting off what some of your global audience will see to be controversial when it suits you, but clamping down when it doesn't. Now, you might be thinking, are they not what-ifs? Well, the thing is that they're not really what-ifs, because Pride gear was worn during the summer in the Overwatch League, and in some of the regions where Blizzard is popular, that's going to be a divisive social issue. So again, that's just not in line with the principles that Jay is saying here. So yeah, sure, to their core Western audience, that's not a divisive social or political statement, but remember what I just quoted you from Jay Allen Brack and the rest of his big statement. Blizz, you can't have it both ways. Then additionally, the TESPA League players kind of did the same thing as Blitzchung, but they weren't punished. Now you might say that's because TESPA is a separate organization, but here's where it gets odd, because TESPA is HQ'd in Blizzard's Irvine office, and it's only got 10 staff according to Wikipedia. Plus, if you read their rules, then what those players did could construe, you could construe that as a violation. So it's a side topic, but I think it's a relevant one that casts some doubt in Jay's statement. Now going back to Jay's statement, it asks whether Blizzard could have done better and where they can go in the future. So Jay talks about concerns expressed to Blizzard from their players, casters, esports fans, and employees. He says that they've reflected on what they've done, that he thinks that they've acted too quickly, and that in service of their play nice, play fair value, they are going to give Blitzchung his price, saying that he played fair in the competition. Jay says, though, that he understands that for many it's not about the money, but that, the money is not them trying to, take away from that. He says, though, that play fair does also cover pre- and post-match conduct, and that because of this, a 6-month suspension is appropriate, after which Blitzchung will be able to compete in Hearthstone. Now, Jay did leave out that Blitz is still actually going to be in the Grandmasters. This was confirmed via a Blizzard employee in Discord, according to Slasher, so he will be able to compete in the 2020 season. Then on the topic of the casters, they believe that they did fail to keep the event focused, and that they will be receiving a 6-month suspension, which of course is not what was said in Blizzard's Chinese statement. But anyway, Jay then ends by saying that they are going to continue to enforce tournament rules to ensure that their broadcasts are focused on the game and don't become a platform for divisive social or political views. Now, of course, as I stated earlier, there's a lot of inherent contradictions and hypocrisy there, which, I'm not going to repeat again, I've already said that. Now, as for those things being rules, it does make sense that if you want to throw on a tournament, then you want the tournament to be the focus, so I can understand what Blizzard want to do there, and I think that's fair enough. I think from an individual's perspective, though, yeah, there can be times where you see a rule rule and you think, well, you know what, I believe in what I'm doing so much that I'm going to violate that rule and I know I'm going to get some punishment. So, you know, there I think that can make sense. It's just on a personal, individual basis, and I don't think that Blizzard should necessarily change their rules, but equally, if somebody does decide to break those rules, I'm going to think, well, you know, good on you, you believe in your cause, and fair enough. Now next though, we've got Blitzchung's response. So he says that he thinks 6 months is too long and he wishes that Blizzard would reconsider the penalty issued to the two casters. He has no idea if he's going to return to Hearthstone and that he will take some time to think about it. He said that in the future he's going to be more careful. Now that's certainly a tame statement given his initial follow-up to the ban, but maybe that's more informed by the knock-on effect that his actions had on the two casters. I imagine that's an externality that he did not really think, he just didn't think they'd get banned, right? Or, you know, a suspension, so maybe he regrets that. But anyway, there you go, that's the core statement. It is worth noting, though, that internally there have been Blizzard protests all week, with Kotaku's sources saying that the internal silence has been deafening, with a planned video address from President J. Allen Brack being delayed. And it's also worth noting the timing here. Blizzard released this at 5:30 Pacific time. That's when most of the EU people are in bed, it's when most of the other coast is winding down, and it's when most organizations that cover news are closed for the weekend. So, I mean, yeah, like delivering controversy late on a Friday evening, that's a classic PR move, and it is what Blizzard chose to do here. Now, part of this is also personally relevant to me. Like, they have applied some of their values in a fair enough way to me in the past. So, I, along with Blizzard, created a beginner's guide to World of Warcraft. Now, the way that worked out is they sent a very specific set of goals for each video. I then fulfilled that spec in the video. I delivered my video to them, by an agreed upon date. Now that series ran for quite a while, and that time intersected with the release months of Battle for Azeroth. That is a time where I cut them to pieces over their decision making. I recommended that people unsubscribed to the game. And I actually received no kickback from Blizzard. Since then, they've sent me press kits, virtual ticket codes to give away, things like that. Now that said, I don't know if they're ever going to work with me in that capacity again, but it is worth noting that they didn't instantly throw me in the bin. But that said, the work that I do will have easily generated them millions of dollars in revenue over the 6 years that I've been doing it, so yeah, I suppose they do have an incentive to put up with me. Finally though, it's also worth noting that J. Allen Brack did not comment on the Hearthstone CN post on Weibo. And that's telling, because that adds so many more grains of salt to their Western response. At the end of the day, that Chinese post did talk about, upholding the honor of the country. It did talk about the severity of the bans. It was very bombastic. Now, you could say, maybe it was NetEase that issued that statement, maybe it was Blizzard, but ultimately, it wasn't the official Hearthstone page. So, because they didn't address that, it just further makes parts of their Western corporate response not really ring true. Okay, with that covered, the latest PTR build has brought with it a more complete version of World of Warcraft's latest legendary item, Astrochemistry, Shroud of Resolve. So, we're going to get this cloak from Rathian in 8.3, and it's going to serve a very important role in progression. So, the way it works is it has ranks. Now, currently I believe that these ranks are increased mostly via progression in Horrific Visions. These ranks have got two purposes, with you getting a stacking sanity loss reduction that ends up capping at 75%, and with it getting a 10 item level boost every 5 ranks, capping out at eye level 475 and starting at 445. Now, this is an interesting one because it makes it very clear that Blizzard want an extrinsic reward for doing Horrific Visions, more than just gear. And this touches on what Preach talked about extensively during his preview of that feature. Now, I touched on it lightly, but my preview is more focused on the game design of the instance itself, especially in solo. Still though, I think this further legitimizes some concerns and exposes Blizzard to the negatives of the over-justification effect. Now, this is where, if you're so reward-focused, basically, that people's sort of starting intrinsic desire to complete content is kind of overridden by an extrinsic reward, the thing you want to actually get for your character. But with that intrinsic motivation not coming back once the extrinsic rewards are capped out, then, of course, it's also just a royal pain in the ass for alts and for hardcore players, so that's another concern. It's also a little bit concerning to me that it will eventually make Horrific Visions be just totally trivial, because when played on solo, and this was the point of my video, so solo means no revives, the Horrific Visions felt great. I thought they were really cool. Everything mattered. It was a compelling gameplay experience. But a higher item level, well, that means you can chain pull further, you can use the mask effects, you can do the bonus objectives, so it'll get harder. But A higher item level, combined with a massive sanity loss reduction via the cloak and heaps of Titan research, do you know what that does? That'll just trivialize the content to the point where it doesn't matter at all in terms of gameplay. And man, Blizzard often do this, and I really worry they're poised to do it again. So, part of the legendary cloak is really cool, but it does expose some concerns. Next though, backpack fans, well, turns out you're going to be able to earn a backpack of your own in-game after all. So there's a lot of kickback, a lot of it from me, over the Recruiter Friend backpack being the only way to get that new type of cosmetic. And I think rightly so, of course, but now it turns out you'll be able to get your own Rathian-themed one in-game. Now, this does not change my distaste for effectively selling a transmog set, but it's good to see Blizzard experiment with more in-game visual rewards. I think things like backpacks, labrums, quivers, just anything you can bolt onto your character. I think the more stuff there, the merrier. It will mean, more engaging visual progression, more customization, and I think that really matters in an MMO, so it's good to see them take notice of that. Next though, I want to highlight some interesting loot. The Kiss Curse rings. These are really cool. They're a continuation of the loot experiments that Blizzard have been toying with since patch 8.1.5's Crucible of Storms loot. This time, they increase your damage and healing by 2%, but they have a negative effect. Now, examples of these negatives are pretty darn cool. They include a tentacle, like a void tentacle, gripping you when an enemy dies, you taunting nearby enemies when you fall below 25% health, damaging abilities against the same target actually decreasing your movement speed, and overhealing, creating an anti-healing absorb shield on you, amongst some others. Now, data mining does suggest the idea of mother cleansing things, so that could come into play here, but I think this is just another interesting loot experiment. Then, of course, there's also some maths fun in it being a percentage, right? Because 2% of 100k is an extra 2,000 damage, but 2% of 200k damage, that's an extra 4,000. So it's going to be fun to see how these rings impact builds, but also just, if we get any more interesting items as the data mining continues. Next, though, let's talk about allied race racial abilities, because the latest combo is actually really cool. We're going to start off with a Volpera, so they can make a camp and then return to that camp with a 1-hour cooldown. It's basically just a second Hearthstone, just that it's going to be to a location of your choosing as long as it's outdoors. I think this will be great for speed leveling, instance farming, just going across the world, general convenience, so that's really cool. Then next, when they first take damage, they're going to reduce that damage by 5% of their max health, so that's kind of interesting. There's another one called Rummage Your Bag, but it's not implemented yet, so that could be kind of cool. And then there's also Volpera Survival Kit. Now this gives you a chance to find an additional satchel of goods when you kill a humanoid. And I think that'll be really interesting, right? I want to see what the gold per hour implications of that are on, say, cloth farms, as just the potential there is basically, I think that Volpera tailors could end up being the best, cloth farmers in the game. Anyway, next we've got the Macan Ohms. They've got a stacking primary stat bonus in combat, though it does decay out of combat. Now, this comes to a total of 400 more of your primary stat. And that does seem a little bit powerful here, considering it's just a free bonus. It's not even one that you've got to, play around, like, say, the Orc Racial, so that's kind of interesting. Then there's also the Hyperorganic Light Originator. This is going to summon a duplicate of yourself to distract foes, so it's basically just a free mirror image taunt, so that's a bit wild. Again, it seems kind of OP, but of course, I assume it's not going to work in bosses and things like that. Then next, Mastercraft lets them actually function as an anvil, fire, and forge themselves, with their limbs acting as profession tools. That's insanely handy, and it's actually going to save you a few bag slots as well, so that's pretty cool. Then Rearm actually means that when they fall below 20% HP, they're going to heal back up 20% more of their max HP. And that seems OP, especially in a 1.5 minute cooldown. So there you go. Overall, I think both races have fun, impactful abilities that really just reinforce who they are, and I think that's racial abilities at their best. I think there are some balance concerns. Yes, absolutely, we'll see if those get tweaked. But overall, I'd say this. I think that the impactful non-combat ones are really the best for elevating fantasy, and I would absolutely love to see more stuff like that be added for the regular races. Next though, well, I hope you weren't farming scrap crates for reputation, because Blizzard have made it so that Rust Bolt Ignasi is no longer give rep after you're exalted. Why? Well, this is a fun one. Players were stockpiling resources for rep tokens, with the plan being to turn them in for Paragon crates once 8.3 went live, of course earning loads of AP in the process. Yeah, that's just what the artifact power mechanic does to gameplay, right? I mean, just, Blizz, please just give us something else instead of AP in the next expansion. At least personally, I'll say this. AP is a massive part of why I've got no motivation for playing the game, because it feels like the game's always fighting against me, and it means that any efforts that I put in now are just completely inefficient versus the catch-up like a few weeks in the future. I just think they're kind of designed against human psychology, basically. So overall, I mean, I just think the existence of this story, I think it's just a symptom of a more fundamental issue. So it's a bit unfortunate, but next though, let's talk about something that truly is just hype as hell, and that's Nile Otha. So raid testing is kicking off, and through various means, we've seen much of the raid. And in short, it looks incredible. The Black Empire aesthetic is just a treat. I absolutely love it. And because of that, I've just got to wonder, are Blizz going to use more of that art in the future? I mean, bar Y'Sharj, well, the other ones, like the other old gods, they're defeated. They're not dead. Their essence is still floating about, so it's always possible. But anyway, it actually looks like Blizz are set to deliver just another excellent raid here, both in terms of content and aesthetics. It's just what the team does best. They're incredible craftspeople when it comes to this. And yeah, I mean, overall, I can't wait to see how it goes. They're getting straight into testing, and I mean, on that, like, bar tuning the raid and the horrific visions, it's actually not like 8.3 has a massive amount of content, especially with them reusing so many locations, so I wouldn't be surprised if we did see a shorter PTR and maybe an early December release date. Now, on top of that though, we've also got a glimpse of the denizens of Nile Otha, and oh, they're really cool. N'Zoth, of course, is there for the boss fight. That's awesome. We've got new dragon models, new faceless, new Akir, many new mounts, so let's talk about the new mounts. We've got a new Cloud Serpent recolor, we've got the Clutch of Hali, which is a Clutch of Jikun recolor, of course, from the Veil of Eternal Blossoms. Then there's also the Sandy Nightsaber. It's a mostly unarmored Nightsaber. Looks quite beautiful. 350 service medals. There's also a N'Zoth-themed jellyfish mount and a serpent mount, both being pretty darn cool indeed. Plus, two Volpera Voldoon mounts. There's an alpaca and a pack hyena. Then we're also getting a Void Storm Dragon, which again looks pretty darn cool. And I'm sure this list is just like sure to like grow, right, as more builds are updated. And then finally, on the topic of mount news, there will be new island-based salvage crates that you can purchase for doubloons, so it seems like this might help you get some of the island-specific mounts. Next though, let's talk about Warcraft 3 Reforged. So, the beta build is available for download. Right now nobody has access, but data mining has begun, and it's given us a look at a few screens. Now, the build itself is named Beta Week 0 RC5 brackets Final RC. Now, RC probably stands for Release Candidate, and that means this is probably just a slice of the release candidate. And if that is the case, then I would expect a far shorter than normal beta period, and likely a decently near release date. And of course, assuming it's not a buggy mess, the earlier the better. I think it's fair to say that Warcraft 3 Reforged really has flown past its summer 2019 release window. But anyway, there you have it. That's an update on the Hong Kong situation as well as the Warcraft news. Certainly a very big video. Of course, I also want to say thank you to our patrons. If you want to watch our special on the Blood Plague as well as our 1.7 episode for the complete history of WoW, you can do that now over on Patreon, and we do have a particularly chunky main rewards package for this month as well. And then finally, if I've seemed really delirious and sweaty, it's because, well, I've had a really big cold, I've had far too much coffee, and basically I feel like I'm barely conscious, so there's probably been too many cuts in this video, but hey, that's just how it is. Turns out when Blizzard do, you know, a surprise announcement of a patch, then a surprise PTR, and then a surprise PTR build that also suggests the Lich King's going to be back, well, you end up having quite a lot of work to do. But yeah, that's been fun to write and keep on top of. And of course, a massive thank you to our team. You know, with them doing the edits and helping with writing, it would not be possible to release the content that we release. Anyway, cheers. I'll see you next time.